right, good morning, everybody. My name is Krista Neiman, and I have been a volunteer with the Epilepsy Foundation Northwest for, 6 years now. Our next speaker is going to be Bob Fraser, who will speak on the topic of employment resources available to individuals with epilepsy. Bob is the director of the Neurological Vocational Services Unit at Harborview Medical Center and a professor at the University of Washington Department of Rehabilitation Medicine. He's an active counseling and rehabilitation psychologist, a certified rehabilitation counselor, and a certified life care planner who directs neurological vocational services within rehabilitational medicine. Within neurological rehabilitation, he has specialized in epilepsy, brain injury, and multiple sclerosis. Bob is also a former board member of the Epilepsy Foundation Northwest. Please welcome Bob Fraser.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. We always love working with our friends at EFNW. They're doing such a great job. The second thing, part of my talk today may be offensive, and I apologize for that because I'm talking about work on a Saturday morning, which I don't think is a bit of best. So, okay, so moving on. So we started in 1976 in epilepsy vocational rehabilitation, and then about 5 or 6 years later, we were asked to work with folks with traumatic brain injury also, particularly those with a severe TBI. About 1 in 6 also has a seizure disorder. And then Dr. Crafton at the MS Rehab Research and Training Center said, look, a lot of our folks with MS also have some cognitive issues. We work with these folks also. And then it was stroke, and our latest group is autism, and we just kind of opened it up 5 or 6 years ago to people with neurological disabilities. So that's our mission, is to provide a full range of employment services to people with neurological disabilities, and as we can, to act as a resource in the field of neurological voc rehab to other entities around the country. So we were founded in 1976, and it's kind of interesting because Dr. Arthur Ward, who started neurological surgery at the university, called me, and Dr. Ward was an well-known epilepsy surgeon. He had money from NINDS under NIH, and he said, would you like to come over here? I just finished my dissertation. I was working part-time in rehab medicine, and I'd heard you'd opened some vocational rehab programs before. Would you come over here? I'm tired of doing epilepsy surgery and people not going to work. So you have to come over here, get this unit started, and then do research with us. So we had a wonderful 3-5-year sequences of funding from NINDS and with Dr. Ward and team. And he was really a pioneer in putting together a full team of covering the full needs of folks with epilepsy within a center. And then Dr. Ogerman picked it up from there, and here we are today. So we moved into neurological. We were in neurological surgery for almost 20 years. Then we were asked to move into neurology, and now I'm come back to day one, back into rehab medicine, which is a nice home. So we're accredited by CARF, which is the Commission on Rehab Facility Accreditation. We have employment planning services, comprehensive voc eval, and community employment. This is where we're accredited for job development, job support, and job site training. This is our staffing, but just to kind of show you that we have a mix of rehabilitation psychologists, voc rehab counselors, and employment specialists, and that's kind of our mix of expertise. So, what are our services? Number one is vocational evaluations, and we do these for people who've never worked before, and we do these for people who, due to a seizure disorder or some kind of cognitive problem, have to kind of reevaluate their goals and do something different. And the evaluation includes vocational interest assessment, work values assessment, which is kind of interesting because the research shows now that people choose a career not so much based on interests, but more so on work values. For example, part-time, full-time, benefits, no benefits, location, who I work with, amount of supervision, lack of supervision, all these kinds of things. So we spend a lot of time just in that area. Aptitudes, personality, emotional status. We synthesize the neuropsych evaluation data when available, and we get a lot of information from all the medical professionals, and we come up with options. So it's not like this job is for you. It's 4 or 5 different options, different approaches, and the consumer, you as the consumer, help us drive the final goal or goals. Community-based assessments, I'll come back on that, but we have about 75 companies that we work with that provide tryouts in the community. And that can be, in a private sector, can be up to 215 hours of non-paid work to see if you like this kind of work, how well you can do it, how well you can learn, for example. We do job placement. We do job retention, which can involve job coaching. We do neuropsych and psych screening consultation. Accommodation consultations are really increasing. We have, pretty much full employment. By the way, perfect employment is 3% unemployment, because there's always some people moving. So we're at 4.5 is really the best I've seen in my career. So that's the good news. Kind of the bad news is everybody's really kind of tight in terms of operationally. There's not much give. And so there's a lot of pressure on people to perform at 120%. So this is where some of the accommodation consultation comes in. And we're going to come back on that. And a new thing that's happening nationally is pre-employment transition services. And I think the state federal vocational rehabilitation system realizes that, we can't start vocational rehabilitation at 22, or 23. Let's start when the kids are still in high school. So the PTS services start when kids are in high school, ideally about 16, I would say, for us, to 21. So that's what the PTS services are. And we just started this about a year ago. Steve Lashley, one of our staff members, is in the audience. He'll be at the booth later. He can explain that to you. But I think it's great that this provides, the young people are doing informational interviews. They're in their evaluation process. They're coming to kind of job club kinds of training. So it gives them kind of a little jump as opposed to waiting till later on. Job club is weekly. This is a no-charge complement to job placement. We have 16 modules. It's non-formulaic. It's based upon the particular members of the group at any one time. And it's an anchor to services. They come in, say every Wednesday morning, 9 to 10, and we go through the different skills for the day, and then they meet with their counselor. And it kind of keeps the momentum going in terms of getting to work or a job tryout. The topics include resume building, interviewing techniques and practice. And this is really important because interviewing, particularly the behavioral interview, you're in conflict with a customer. How do you handle it? Well, there's two priorities with facing you. These are the two scenarios. What would you do first? These are the kind of things that it's not like, tell me something about yourself. Those days are over. Okay, so the people are really doing very, very big behavioral-oriented interviewing techniques. Temp to perm companies. I talked to the president of Express Personnel recently, and the data a couple years ago was that 38% of hires in the city of Seattle were temp to perm companies. He says, no, Bob, that's over. It's closer to 1 and 2. So I'm not sure if that's a hard statistic, but it's high. So if we're not considering temp to perm companies, we're not considering the full spectrum of the job market. And state folk rehab used to not give us credit for a temp to perm placement for a year contract, for example. But now they are, because they realize that things have turned around. Disclosure of medical conditions to employers, kind of your e-commerce, your job search, how to navigate that, the Indeed and the different websites, procuring informational interviews, which is a big part of our effort, very targeted mailings for informational interviews, because it's really hard to get to the HR person. It's really hard to press the flesh anymore because everything's so electronic. We bring in guest professional speakers, but that's just a sampling. Employer services, basically the number one in any survey we've done is they want pre-screened applicants. They want to know that this person has been screened by you and is going to be a good match. And if we do that consistently, we really, actually, if business is our first customer, everything else falls into place. So if we're working closely with business and we're meeting their needs, our clients are going to work. So that's kind of been a shift a little bit in our thinking recently. Accommodation, consultation, and referral. On-the-job training monies, so we can pay half the employer's salary while he's training the person. Job coaching and other employment supports. We have 3 job coaches. We're trying to get one more, so we have a little cadre of job coaches depending on who can cover what. Sometimes it's weekend coverage. And then employer incentives. And so these are the employer incentives. We can try somebody out for the 215 hours, which can be 5 weeks full-time on a non-paid tryout in the private sector, or we tend to spread it out, like 10 to 12 weeks, 15 to 20 hours, to kind of embed the person in the tryout, because about 30% of those just transition to paid work. So it's kind of one-stop shopping for some people. So if a person with epilepsy, you have a $2,400 tax credit that comes to the employer in hiring you. If you're a veteran, the tax credit's $9,600. There's accommodation tax credits. It was interesting. They modified a bathroom one time, one employer, and he said, the question was, can other people use the bathroom too? And I said, no problem. Employee education. Sometimes we'll be asked to come in and educate the coworkers in regards to epilepsy. That's happened a number of times. On-the-job training funds. That's state monies to help the employer pay during a training period. Paid employee internship. DVR will also do that selectively. Again, pre-selected job-ready clients. That's a big incentive to them. And the new thing is the federal contractor diversity requirement. So, for example, you're Starbucks and you have a franchise within the VA, okay? You can be looked at for your diversity requirement. At 7% of your workforce are individuals with disability. This used to be aspirational, but now it's required. Again, last year they started to give out pink slips for people who weren't meeting the diversity requirement, so that's now become an incentive. Our board members, we set up a separate nonprofit 1989, and it wasn't our idea. It was a group of community employers who said, look, what's going to happen is the state occasionally is going to go into stall, and you're not going to have any money for your folk rehab program. And so they set this nonprofit up. They did some fundraising for us in addition to business advisement, networking, marketing, et cetera. And wouldn't you know, 2 years later, the state went into a stall for about 8 months, and unless we had had this nonprofit, we would have been out of business. So we love these people, and they're just a great bunch of people. I would say some are just business people that we've just had good relationships with, but others have come through our program or have a family member in the program, and that's kind of how that came about. So one plug is the board is doing a Cheers for Careers social for us in Pioneer Square, November 15th. There's no cover, but all the non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages and music are covered by community employers and our board. So if you're not doing anything, it's always a good time, and the money goes directly to our job coaches, or to pay for our job coaches. Okay, what were our outcomes last year? We did 272 service plans. Our placement rate was 60%. Our goal is always about 65%, but we were at 60% last year. Satisfaction with our services is generally good across the different customers, employers, state folk rehab counselors, and clients. Time to placement was 3.72 months, and the average wage was $16.52 an hour. Just to show you the range of placements here, we have, for example, on the left side, a hospital cleaner, and then we had our first physician that we placed last year. So I think she probably brought up the hourly wage a bit, but you can see there's some clusters like mailroom clerks. There were 4. I think there were customer service retail 5. So what's the employment status of adults with epilepsy? It's 2 to 3 times the national unemployment rate generally, but I'm going to tell you the bigger issue is underemployment. Okay, in fact, one of the temp to perm companies asked us to come down, and we gave a seminar for about 25 of their recruiters, because a lot of folks with active seizure conditions were working in the temp to perm market, and in general were underemployed, so they wanted to better understand epilepsy. Again, specialized programs generally have a 60% or higher placement rate. So, replicating our program, there are not that many specialized epilepsy vocational programs in the country, and so the PEP program in the Bay Area, they deal with folks with epilepsy and traumatic brain injury, just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and about 11 years ago, I got a call from, again, a neurosurgeon, Pete Weber, and Dr. Laxner down there, a neurologist, and they said, we want a vocational program. And I went down, we worked with them for about a week, and so he said, how much to get it going? I said, it's about $500,000, because I want you to be stabilized, to give you some time to become a vendor and get other help. And he called me back in a week. He says, I have one donor, we're ready to go. So this is a neurosurgeon just tapping somebody on the shoulder, and so. But hats off to them, they did a great job, and it's great to see that the program have its 10th anniversary. Dr. Lance Trexler, neuropsychologist, put together a number of funding sources at the Rehab Hospital of Indiana, and that's folks with traumatic brain injury and epilepsy. But he was the spark plug on that. And the new one is EF Works in Atlanta, and this is funded by UCB. They called us about a year ago or so, year and a half, and so we want to do a specialized epilepsy voc program. You know, what would it take? And so we launched that project last March, and I think they have 40 clients now, and they have 32 companies that are partnering with them. So they've done a great job. In fact, I'll be there this Thursday evening for a meeting with the employers. But I'm really happy to see that up, and hopefully UCB was interested in maybe doing more of this, which we're delighted about if we can be successful in Atlanta. So, in terms of considering whether you're able to go to work or not, number one might be, am I able to work part-time or full-time? So the thought here is to consider a non-paid tryout, consider a community-based assessment, okay? And again, we have about 75 companies that provide us with that kind of tryout. And we try to do it very tailored to what you actually want to do. And so is this going to work? If you're on SSDI, you have the 9-month work trial, so you can make as much as you want, but after the 9 months, they're going to take a look at that and reevaluate your SSDI stream. On SSDI, consider part-time work, because you can make up to, right now, it changes every year a little bit, $1,170 per month. There's been a big shift over the years in the percentage of people coming to our program for part-time work. It used to be about 16, 18%, and now it's closer to 1 and 2, because you're able to get a little more money on part-time work than you did years ago. I mean, I remember not that long ago, it was only like $390 or something like that. So that's kind of made a difference. The extra $1,200 a month is very helpful, as most people would consider. On SSI, if you have supplementary security income, you have to consider your cap, because you lose $1 from SSI for every $2 earned. And at some point, you could cancel out your SSI, then you lose your medical coverage, which is important for a lot of people. So that needs to be considered. But State Voc Rehab has planners at their agency that'll help you work through this if this is a concern. So we have open intake every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock at 401 Broadway. You can complete the intake form, or we can send it to you online. You can come in with it complete, and you meet with an individual counselor to assess your vocational needs. So that's how that works. And then we discuss your service needs between counselor and client. And while you're there, we call state DVR office near your home. Could be Bellevue, could be Renton, could be wherever. And we make that transition. We give you a time, and that's to get services funding for what your needs are. Then we send a letter to your residents supporting your eligibility with services recommendations that you bring to the DVR appointment, okay, just to kind of lubricate the process, because it can be kind of awkward sometimes. So it's the case of Rachel. She came to us about 3 weeks ago on referral from our friends at Swedish. We get a lot of just, Swedish Medical Center and our regional epilepsy center at Harborview have over 7,000 outpatients together. So we get a lot of referrals just from those facilities. The person is having partial complex seizures, or I guess now focal seizures without awareness, which secondarily generalize. She's had 2 occasions of status epilepticus. So she's had, and one I think required overnight or 2 days of hospitalization. She had quit her job as a sales associate a year ago because she was having trouble with seizures on the job. So we made an appointment in 1 week at a local DVR office, and the request was for a vocational evaluation with some cognitive screening, because we were concerned that the status may have cost her in some areas. We wanted to make sure we understood our strengths and any concerns we had. What if the focus is keeping a job? And this is really an increasing part of our business, is trying to keep people satisfactorily and happily on the job. So, if you read the Americans with Disabilities Act, it becomes kind of overwhelming, because they just throw out all these listing of accommodations. And so one assistive technology specialist said, Bob, think about it this way. Think about change in procedure modifying the workstation, and then some bells and whistles, some assistive technology equipment, et cetera. So, for example, we had a guy who worked at the Bank of America Operations Center for a number of years, and his seizures would occur standardly. They were pretty frequent, maybe once a week, every 10 days. It'd be a generalized tonic-clonic seizure about 6 a.m., 7 o'clock, and he'd be kind of groggy for a while, have difficulties. So they just changed his work schedule, like from 10 o'clock to 7, okay, and that really helped because he was able to come around and get to work by 10 o'clock or so if he had a seizure that day. It could be another person had to drive the mail across the street to another facility, and that person asked not to do that. If he could do something else for somebody else, they could drive the mail across the street. So some of those things are pretty basic. A workstation modification, we'll use the Bank of America example. They did a great job. He was working at a large table where he had to put together a lot of different banking forms and so forth, and they matted the whole floor around on the floor of the table, and then kind of did rubber edging of the table just in case he had a seizure. So it's that kind of things that would be examples of workstation modification. Assistive technology can be something like EndNote or some type of computer app to keep you organized. Or in some cases, for one person who had some difficulty with organization and planning, the assistive technologist went to the site, color-coded the tools he used. He was assembling bicycles, so that he put in order, in sequence, the tool back in the color-coded box, so he kept everything straight. And I think it cost us more to send the assistive technologist out, because the Carol only cost $28 for them to make that. But so that's an example of some simple kinds of things. What if one lives some distance from Seattle? Because I know some of you come a long way. And unfortunately, we get calls, if you're affiliated program in Spokane, unfortunately, there isn't, a program in Spokane. Although state DVR is still there, okay? So you can go to the State of Washington Division of Vocational Rehabilitation website, plug in your zip code, and it'll tell you the local office to go to get help. We can still provide an evaluation or accommodation recommendations. We've done that, in Lake Chelan, all kinds of places from afar, but we won't be effective in terms of actually helping you with job placement. And lastly is the Job Accommodation Network. So the website is askjan.org, and we use them quite a bit. So that's if we don't have an idea, we can't get an idea from the assistive technologist, maybe with a state agency, and so we call them, okay? So it's no cost accommodation consultation. They try to get back to you in about 24 hours. They're housed at West Virginia University and funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. Doesn't cost you anything. They've been there for 25 years, and they have 3 teams. They have a physical accommodation team, they have a sensory accommodation team, and a cognitive neurological accommodation specialist. And they are just fabulous in terms of not only giving you ideas, they'll give you the product, they'll give you the company in which that's using it. So it's just wonderful. Sometimes I get 3 companies that use different type of equipment to handle a certain problem. So again, it's an in-person, online accommodation consultation, disability-specific employer information. For example, they have a brochure on epilepsy and employment, okay? And you can just go to the website and you'll see disabilities, A to Z, and you can look up epilepsy, you can look up autism, and they have a brochure that you can hand to an employer or just kind of for your own consideration relative to accommodations. They'll give you guidance as to ADA and your accommodation rights, okay? So it's a wonderful entity, and I really appreciate the Department of Labor setting that up. So I'd like to thank you very much. If there are further questions, that's our main line office number, or if our website is nvsrehab.org, and members of the team are always available during the week to try to deal with your concerns. Okay. So we just open up for questions.
Tuesday assessments, do you need to make an appointment?
No.
No, you
There's
can
no
just-
appointment necessary. You just need to come in about 10:30, but you could call and we could just send you the intake forms. You can do that at home, and it just kind of fast tracks things a bit. Yeah.
And the services, we live out by University Place, Tacoma. Is there a DVR office there that could be more helpful?
We are trying to have a bigger presence in Tacoma. So right now we have a staff member down there on Thursdays, and so we could just that would
Connect
be
us
the
with
start
that.
point. And so just contact us, and we'll make sure that we make the contact. We also moving a job placement person. There's a big need in Tacoma, but we're just trying to get our staffing up so we can kind of pull that off.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
How's that? Okay. Mostly, I have two comments, which I think you probably have worked into a little bit. Having had complex partial seizures, I have found I've always disclosed to employers because I don't want that to be such a big surprise.
Right.
But every so often, when it happens, a staff person treats me like I'm contagious. And they will literally never look at me again, keep away from me. And I think that's an important piece. I just used to consider it a form of discrimination. And the other thing is that people think it's contagious.
Yeah.
And I just want to go up and shake them and say, you can't catch this from me. But those are some of the reactions that I used to have. I don't have complex partials anymore, but it's something I often tell people
Right.
to watch for that.
Yeah, I would go directly to HR and in those instances and say this is happening. Two things. One is you can use that job accommodation network brochure, which is really good. Just explains everything. And secondly, we'd be glad to come in and do an educational program. But yeah, no one should ever put up with that. And a part of it, it's just ignorance. Fortunately, was one group out of San Francisco that every 5 years does a survey on attitudes toward epilepsy by employers, and it's gotten better and better and better. So now it's over 80% are positive about hiring qualified people with epilepsy, which has come a long way over the decades. Yeah.
You're talking about it being in a workplace. We noticed that our daughter and son have the same issue in the school settings. Is there someone who can come in to a school setting and kind of explain what epilepsy is and maybe how it affects to a kid's setting?
Yeah, I think EF Northwest has a team, right, that does exactly that, right? Yep. Yeah. So yeah, EF Northwest, you have some nurses who do that too, I think.
Yeah, they're not employees of ours, they're volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. So yeah, just contact EF Northwest. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is this working? I just want to know, you were speaking about, should you disclose medical conditions to an employer? Are you required to? Should you?
This is it's a very personal thing, right? So some people choose. I think people are more comfortable. I think that when they do disclose in the interview, but and some people will say, well, I think that I might not get the job. So some people hold it, are offered, and then kind of once on the job, disclose to a supervisor, a coworker. I think so. It's not one size fits all. But we'd be glad to discuss that with you if you wanted to give us a call, because that does come up. Steve, what do you think? Do you think most people disclose in the interview? Well, the question is, do you have active seizures for openers? Will they be noticed? Part two. There's a number of questions. Any thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is, from an employer standpoint, they want to know, they'll ask the question, can you do the job with or without reasonable accommodations? If you feel like you're truly going to need an accommodation, or your epilepsy may affect your performance in any way, then it's good to be proactive in disclosing. But if you don't feel like you need accommodations, and you don't feel like it's something that's really going to be present in the workforce or really impair your ability to do the job, then you wouldn't necessarily need to disclose. there are some other benefits that you will have access to if you do disclose, such as the tax credits and some of these different employer incentives. But ultimately, the big thing is just kind of where the person feels comfortable, and then the key thing is more just the delivery of it too. We find that it's usually conversations that's not a very stressful conversation if it's rehearsed, and if it's kind of clear, concise, and succinct.
Right. Right. But again, if you wanted to discuss that, if someone you want to discuss it, we'd be glad to take a call and go through the pros and cons.
We've got one over here first.
So I guess my question is, in terms of people coming in looking for services from you, are there any restrictions or guidelines in terms of how severe their disability would have to be? Who would be able to access your services if they had a mild form of epilepsy?
Yeah,
Would they have to qualify for SSDI or SSI? That kind of
Yeah,
thing?
like give me an example. I mean, I would say high 40% plus are on SSDI, okay, and are looking for part-time work. And there's no parameters. For example, we have one company where people work from home, okay, and it's one of our better employers. In fact, he's president of our board, and we have at least one client probably has several seizures a week during the day, okay? But the way it works is he can just take time out, and then come back and maybe work in the afternoon. So there really are no parameters. We will try to work with everybody individually.
Do you work with any other agencies like Skills Incorporated or WorkSource or other agencies who are doing similar kinds of things that you're doing but aren't disability-based in the same way?
Yeah, we not so much with the state agencies because we have all their information's online, the jobs. But I think one thing we're trying to do is to work more with temp to perm companies, okay? And number two is chambers of commerce. Like the award that we're giving November 15th is to the Renton Chamber of Commerce. They've been exceptional in tryouts within the agency. I can call Vicki, who's CEO there, and say, look, we're looking for this kind of job, she'll a lot of times pave the way for us. So I think like the Edmonds Chamber of Commerce, that kind of thing. So we're trying to get more, partnering with chambers of commerce. It gives us a wider net,
In working with placing people, have you worked with any colleges, universities that specialize in working with students that have cognitive disabilities?
I'm not sure we have an active relationship, but Bellevue College has a very good, I think, transition. It's a 2-year program for people with some cognitive limitations, and it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of life skills, computer software skills. They have some job tryouts built in. I think it takes people maturationally up the ladder quite a bit if they're not quite ready to go out there. It's kind of like almost like finishing school and you come out with a 2-year degree. So I think that's a good example. But there are other short-term programs at Green River, et cetera, like on retail cashier, just a period of weeks kind of thing. So I'm not sure we have an active collaboration, but we know who's kind of got what. Yeah.
Thanks. I have a second question. I noticed in your presentation that you work with employers and you listed lots of benefits that they provide. Do you work with those employers to navigate the benefits they can receive?
Right. So we
That's
like,
part
for
of what you
example,
do?
If they're interested in the tax credit, and we make sure we have the form, et cetera, all made out for them, and so that they can just file it with their tax, kind of thing. The biggest thing they really want, particularly in the current economy, is pre-selected workers. It's been a long time since I've had, I come in the morning, maybe on a Tuesday at 8:30, and there's already a call from an employer saying, hey, I need 3 people. This is the job. Do you have anybody? I mean, that's if we can meet people's needs, they're going to come back to us, and that's even more so than tax credits or accommodation. I'm sorry, tax credits or other incentives. Yeah.
Are most of your employers in Seattle, or are they scattered throughout this, like the Tacoma, Bellevue, or other areas in the state?
I would say they're mostly from Linwood, to north of Tacoma. We're trying to get more of a presence in Tacoma. And it's just been the last year and a half, but there's plenty of vocational rehabilitation work we could do down there. It's just trying to kind of get the funding to free up people, but I really see the growth in Tacoma. One of the things, the movement of people at a middle earnings level, the middle class, you know, it's interesting, they're moving south, you know, and they're like, we used to have more business in Kent, and we talked to DVR counselors, you know, our clients can't afford to live here anymore, you know, they're moving south. So I'm going to see a lot of growth in Tacoma just because of affordability of rentals, you know. Yeah. It's a big change. Yeah. Okay, yes ma'am. Yeah, would we work with Down syndrome? Based on the level of cognitive functioning, we might send them to another program. For example, the one at the University of Washington Rehab Medicine has a contract with the county, for example, specifically to serve folks with Down syndrome in job transition and job placement. Okay, folks. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your break.